Welcome to In the Mix of Chaos. My name is Hector Gomez. This is one of the new webisodes on YouTube on the Screaming Rebels or screamingrebelsyoutube.com. We're going to go ahead and start this one. My first one is about the zombie apocalypse. What we're talking about is Rudy Eugene in Miami attacked another man by the name of Ronald Popolo. And what basically happened was they found two guys naked. One guy was, I guess, walking by this terminal thing and overpass and saw this two naked guys, just chilling on the sidewalk, decided to go walk over there, finds out this other guy by the name of Rudy Eugene was eating this other guy's face named Ronald. Told him to stop, called the cops, and cops came. Rudy was mad, growling and hissing, and continued to eat the guy's face. Police decided to put one pop in his dome, and he was dead. So everybody in hysteria said, "Oh, it's the zombie apocalypse! It's the zombie apocalypse!" No, if it was a zombie apocalypse, Ronald Popolo would have became a zombie instead of being in the intensive care unit. So no zombie. A lot of people are saying now that it was a virus, not bath salts. Bath salts was one of the major things that have been going around the media, saying that Eugene was on bath salts. And for people that don't know, bath salts, no, it's not the stuff that your mom goes and pours in her bathtub and relaxes. Bath salts is actually a synthetic name. It's basically something you can buy at smoke shops or convenience stores, and it says do not consume, but a lot of people know it as a synthetic version of cocaine. And they're selling this stuff, and they're saying that that was one of the reasons that Rudy Eugene ate this guy's face, because he was so, I guess, in a hallucinogenic state where he was consuming this guy, probably thinking it was like apple pie or something. I don't know. But I did do some research on the bath salt, and bath salt is actually components, and it's called, let's see if I can get this for you, methylene doxide provalerone, or MDPV, a psychoactive drug and a stimulant. It's basically interrupts the intake of the inhibitors in your brain and causes euphoria and stuff like that. Those are one of the positive sides. I mean, like any drugs, people are taking it because they want to feel something like euphoric. And saying some of the descriptions is for sexual stimulation. Some of them are increased alert and awareness, and people want to do, psychoactive drugs and feel that euphoria and everything else. But also the other psychological effects is like insomnia, grinding of teeth, tempers, chills, sweating, confusion, psychotic delusions, and violent behaviors, suicidal thoughts. So my thing about drugs, and especially these new drugs, is basically synthetic drugs scare the shit out of me. There's another one called MK, which is a synthetic hash or THC stimulant that's supposed to be like marijuana, but without the marijuana component in it, so people feel free that they can smoke it and not worried about drug screens and come out positive for marijuana. That one has been popular because the reason that Pfizer had money into this drug, because they were trying to take the bad parts of marijuana and just using the main components, such as it's supposed to cause, it's like how do you say, it helps with back pain, alleviate a lot of stuff. So they wanted to get all the good stuff out of the marijuana and not keep the highness and the giddiness and all that, take that away and just use the main components. And they kind of dropped it, and so people started getting it and making it and selling it. You can go to any smoke shop and it's just the chemists, they just basically make a synthetic version. And I don't really see any problem with people doing these drugs, except you don't know what's in it. You don't know. Marijuana is like one of the great ones that, we all know. It came from a plant. Somebody smoked it. Somebody decided it got you high. Cocaine as well. People used to be in the Indies and all that. We used to eat the coca leaves. They found a stimulant. And later on, as we got smarter, and evolved, we learned that we can, break it down, make it into a powder form, and, you know, 80s parties. So, all these drugs are known. LSD was a good example that was barely discovered in the 60s, and it was actually made by the government. Government wanted to make these super soldiers that felt no pain, and later on became leaked out to, our society. So, all these synthetic drugs kind of just remind me of crack cocaine, and, some people still like that stuff, and you can tell a crackhead when you see one. I mean, there's no, like, everybody's like, oh, you can tell a pothead when you see one. No, you can tell a crackhead when you see them. When you go and you forget something and you need something, or your kids are sick in the middle of the night and you decide to go to Walmart because they're the only places open, and you're in the same line with somebody who has light bulbs, some foil, what else can they be doing? But back to the zombie apocalypse, I don't believe there's zombie apocalypse. I think it's a lot of hype. With the popularity of such, dramas like The Walking Dead, and we have 28 Days Later, and there's a huge zombie it's a pulp culture right now. So, people feed into this idea that we have zombies now just because some crazy fucked up person named Rudy Eugene decided to do drugs, and probably was already fucking crazy to begin with and didn't have to be doing drugs, decided to do drugs and ended up eating some dude's face. That's on him. And there's other crazy people. That same week, there was a guy named Alexander from Baltimore University who the father was, I guess the father and his brother were at the house, and the brother went down to the basement and found this pot that never was really kind of out of place, opened it up, found a severed head and hands, called the authorities, and ended up that Alexander actually hacked this guy named Cujo Agia Kondai, and it was his roommate. I guess they had been fighting previously, and basically when he was interrogated, he admitted of cutting up the parts of the body and dumping them off behind a church. But before that, he ate the entire heart and ate part of the brain of this person. So it's not the zombie apocalypse, and I don't drive into that hype. I think that that's just how the world is. I mean, there's a lot of fucked up things that happen, and I think when it happens in the States, it seems more surreal and people don't want to believe it. But definitely people are evil. I mean, there's good people and bad people, and some people do fucked up bad things to other people. Unfortunately, that's how the world is. I think we don't see it enough because, we have this desensitized television that's just more politically ran and everything else, so we don't really see what's going on in the other world. So that's my thought on the zombie apocalypse, and just remember, if it was the zombie, give Ronald a couple days to come out of the intensive care unit and start attacking other people and eating them as well. I seen on Facebook that some people say it's a cover-up, and there's this LD5 whatever virus. There's all kinds of viruses. I think we discussed this on the last podcast. There's one called Kuru, who people who eat brains not cooked properly or whatever the thing is, they get violent shakes and everything else, just like mad cow disease. So people are not meant to eat other people. I mean, there's been studies where people's mouths are dirtier than a dog's or any other animal's mouth. So yeah, there probably is some bacteria looming around. We're not the cleanest animals as much as we like to think we are. So this concludes, In the Mix of Chaos with Hector Gomez, one of the new webisodes on Screaming Rebels. You can follow us at Screaming Rebels on YouTube, or you can go to The Screaming Rebels at tk.com. That concludes this one, and this is a weekly one, so I'll bring up a new one probably on Friday. And congratulations, this is the first one. Many more to go. Go ahead and subscribe if you like it. If you don't, hey, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Enjoy. Bye. Welcome to In the Mix of Chaos. Today we're going to go ahead and be talking about drugs, rehab, and Christianity, and how they kind of all correlate sometimes all together. So with drug abuse, there is people who can do recreational drugs or do drugs, drink, and everything is fine. They can live a normal life. They can go a couple days without a drink and just use it as a recreational thing. On the other hand, you can have a friend who takes that one sip, takes that first puff or anything else, and then their whole life revolves around getting this drug again. And for people like that, there is rehab. What I've noticed and come to notice by having people go to rehab and go to all these programs is that the addiction never actually goes away. And in fact, it becomes a new addiction. People don't know what I mean is a lot of these ones here, usually in Central California, end up being rehab centers that have devout Christianity beliefs. So you're taking away that drug and introducing a new drug called Christianity. And for people that think that I'm making it up, you might know people who have done these programs or end up going to these programs and end up devouring their whole entire existence to following a book. I'm not saying Christianity or religion is bad. I'm just saying that in the time we share, we have to live our lives and not necessarily continue living the life of somebody who's physically passed away. So with this thought brings me to the, where people end up writing scriptures everywhere they go and take life as a mission of God. And all they do and see is people like them and start excommunicating themselves from the people that they once had fun with, thinking that it's going to lead to a worse life or anything else, which is unnecessarily untrue. So in the end, essentially, people who have addiction is a person who has an addictive personality. An addictive personality just means that anything they do or focus their life on, it becomes an addiction. They'll find anything they can to make it and become an addiction. There's people like video games. Video games is a highly addictive thing. Some people might actually sit there thinking they're only doing it for 10 or 20 minutes when they're in fact wasted a whole half day doing it. But then they can put it down and live a normal life and continue doing other stuff. And there's some people that can't. So everybody has an addiction. I'm not misleading people to say, everybody's an addict, but thing is control and to learn and live your life. I mean, automatically you don't want to just not do anything anymore because you think that somebody who's in the spiritual realm is going to judge you. You judge yourself. You treat other people like you want to be treated, and I'm pretty sure everything will be fine. I don't see any damnation going to happen to me. I don't necessarily believe stuff like that, but I also don't believe that believing in something is a bad thing. People should believe in stuff. I mean, that's the way people want to know that they're loved and cared, and everybody's different. I personally think if I treat people the way I want to be treated, and live a good life, then my mission in life is succeeded. So there is addictive personalities and stuff like that, and the whole thing is to control your life. Know what's wrong, know what's right, and don't ever question yourself. If you're questioning yourself, should I be doing this, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. And also don't fall into thinking you're not an addict when you go to these programs and end up becoming this devout Christian, because once again, you are an addict again. You're becoming an addict of Christianity. So you just basically dropped one drug, which was a physical drug that you could have taken and ingested and smoked or consumed, into a new drug that's, printed. Bible's there for guide. It guides you through life and shows you the right way to do, and if you live that life, then you really shouldn't be judging anybody else. So that is my spiel. It's 5 minutes. This is In the Mix of Chaos with Hector Gomez, and this is the drug rehab in Christianity one. Signing off. Thank you. to In the Mix of Chaos. Right now, we're going to go ahead and start filming Screaming Rebels. Just go ahead. I'm just waiting for my co-host to come along, and then we'll go ahead and start that. But since I have a couple minutes, I thought I'd go ahead and do my In the Mix of Chaos. And today's topic, we're going to talk about speaking English in America. Knowing that America's primary language is English, you'd be confused because you get everything in Spanish and any other language there is possibly on this planet Earth. My thing is that, you know, we live in America, and I think that people should learn how to speak English if they're part of our society. That's just the way I feel. I'm Hispanic, and yo hablo español muy bien, and I don't mind speaking to it with my family and everybody else. But my primary language is always going to be English, and that's because I simply live here. If I lived in another country, and I will learn that language to go ahead and be part of that constructive society. So I don't buy when people don't want to learn English. That's the thing. Like, I have no problems if you came from another country and just didn't know the language, but in a couple years or even months, you should start learning the primary language to get comfortable here. A lot of people don't do that, though. A lot of people take that I don't know how to read, I don't know how to write, I don't know Spanish, and I don't know English, and I don't want to learn it. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. You know, if I lived in another country, I wouldn't expect people to learn English to communicate with me. I would have to learn their language, and I feel that's the same way with here in the United States. I know people that live here for like 10, 15 years and don't know English. That seems amazing to me, that in all that time they never took the chance to learn English. And that's basically our fault too, because we enable those people to not want to learn English. You know, we have people that translate for them. We have pamphlets that are in their language and everything else. But that doesn't happen in a lot of other countries. I mean, there's certain countries, because of our military state, where you'll see like a stop sign in that, and it'll say it in their language, but it'll say it in English. But not a lot of other countries do that. Those are only the ones that are neutral territories with America. But I feel that it's insulting not to learn their language. If I was going to another country, I would try to learn as much of that language to go ahead and just, you know, go through it without any problems. And, you know, I've traveled to other countries. I've gone to Spain, and I've gone backpacking through Europe. And the thing is, like, I didn't know French. I had a little book. I tried it, but they appreciated it more when I was trying to speak their language than just coming off at them speaking English. And that's the way I see it over here. Like, I give props to people who don't know English that well, but they're trying to communicate with me in English. And at that time, I will go ahead and say, okay, you know, I do speak Spanish, and I'll go ahead and help you. But there's people that are demanding you to know their language. And I just don't feel that should be like that here in the States. So this is a little short one. That's my little topic, is basically, if you're in the United States, learn English. And that's all there is to it. You should be humble and proud to be an American. You came to this country. You didn't just come to this country because, you know, we forced you to. There is an opportunity. There's grander opportunities here in this country than there is over there. And that's the reason you're here. And you're here to follow that American dream. And that's any minority or immigrant's dream, is the American dream, is that you can become nothing and become something out of that. And I take a lot of pride in that. But, you know, there's people that just don't want to learn the language and refuse to learn the language. Like you're insulting us by not wanting to learn our language. And you think that we're robbing you out of your culture by you learning our language. It doesn't make any sense to me. My father came from Mexico, came illegally, and he found a job, got married, became a U.S. citizen, and that was like one of the things that he was so proud about through his entire life, is that he was an American citizen. He was proud about learning about our country. He loved this country, and he spoke English in this country, and he felt the same way as I do. So I don't feel that's necessarily like a racial thing, but people will see it that way as me being racist. I'm not racist. I am intolerable to ignorant people that don't want to learn anything, and they don't take pride in where they live. I mean, this is a land of opportunities. Some people take advantage of this place, and they don't care. It's just, be careful of what you tread, because people will get tired of you eventually and be like, how long have you been here? How come you don't know this? Why don't you know this? And playing that dumb card that I don't know anything, that's a great, smart move for people to play. Like, oh, I don't know, I really don't know. But you should know. The primary language here is English. There should be a way for everybody to learn it. There is a way that everybody learns it. The freaking adult schools teach people to speak English. It's just that time and confidence and to know. And don't be ashamed that you might not know a little thing here and there. People will take great pride and great respect for you if you just try. And that's my whole thing. Try to speak English, and you will further your knowledge of speaking the language. We're in America. We speak English, and that's in the mix of chaos. Thank you. Hey, this is Hector, and welcome to In the Mix of Chaos. Today we're going to go ahead and talk about Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen. They recently fought yesterday on UFC 148. Anderson Silva came out with the victor of that fight, coming out with the second round TKO. And I'm going to talk about why Chael Sonnen came out a winner as well. People will say otherwise, but I think Chael Sonnen did come out a victor out of that fight simply because of the promotion that he did. I don't think Chael Sonnen fighting anybody else in a pay-per-view event would have made the number of pay-per-view buys, and as well as selling out the weigh-ins and selling out the UFC event entirely. And why I say that is because he scrutinized for 2 years, followed Anderson Silva and stalked him and said a lot of inappropriate stuff. But this was only to entice in the people in the audience to see what they wanted to see, and that was a fight. And Dana White actually came out like a week ago saying that Anderson Silva, when he went to Brazil, still didn't want to sign to fight Chael Sonnen. So Chael Sonnen has come out a victor out of this thing because he probably got the biggest buy, or probably the biggest check for any fight he's ever fought, as probably as well as getting a percentage of the pay-per-view money as well. So Chael Sonnen does come out a victor, and he is probably going to be one of the greatest self-promoters out there for the sport. He's like the Muhammad Ali of the UFC. I mean, you don't like what he says, but you're going to just want to see him to fight and see what's going to happen. And Chael Sonnen did do his thing. I mean, he's not a person that went out there to collect a check. He absolutely dominated Anderson Silva in the first round. There was high controversy as well as from Anderson Silva from being over-greased. They said he was greasing his head and he was moving it down to his torso. He is not one of the first fighters to ever be having this controversy about being greased. There was a recent ex-welterweight champion, Georges St. Pierre, who has always been criticized about being greased, and a lot of fighters have complained during those championship fights that he was greased. I think BJ Penn was the first one to actually say anything about that when he was fighting Georges St. Pierre, that he felt really slippery. And so Anderson Silva was also grabbing trunks and everything else, but in the end he came out the victor. He kneed him, and it looked like an illegal knee, but if you look at the tape, it was not. So he is the victor of this thing, but a lot of people are now talking that he's absolutely dominated the middleweight division, and there's no more fighters for him to fight in that division, and I seem to disagree on that. First of all, there is some major fighters out there that he hasn't fought. He hasn't fought Mark Munoz. He hasn't fought Brian Stann. He hasn't fought Alan Belcher. He hasn't fought who's the other one? Rich Franklin. He has fought. He's defeated, but he's on a hot streak right now. He recently came off a victory off of Vanderlei Silva, which I thought was one of the brilliant fights. Vanderlei Silva basically had him knocked out on the second round, and he survived the barrage of punches that Vanderlei Silva took on him, and he ended up dominating the rest of the fight. Chung Lee recently came off a victory off of Patrick the Predator Cote and won his first fight in the UFC. So there is a lot of fights. And Tim Bocek, I forgot to say, he's one of the strong contenders up there in the middleweight division as well. So I don't necessarily think that Silva should move to the light heavyweight division at any time soon, because there's no reason for him. There's enough fighters. I wouldn't mind to pay to watch him fight Mark Munoz. If Mark Munoz fights and wins the next fight, which I believe is in July 11th, which is really coming up really soon. If Mark Munoz, I think he's in the top contention, and I think he should be granted the next fight with Anderson Silva, and I think it would be a great fight. As well as Alan Belcher just came out of just came back from surgery. I think his last fight, he absolutely dominated that one as well. So, and Brian Stann as well. Brian Stann lost to Chael Sonnen via triangle, but recently dominated and TK'd Alicia Sakara. So there's a lot of fighters in that weight division. I don't think Anderson Silva needs to go. He probably will move to light heavyweight, but that would be something that probably just because of the hard, the cut of weight and his age. The older you get, the harder it is to cut the weight. So eventually we will see Anderson Silva in the light heavyweight division, but I don't think necessarily they'll probably do a catch weight with John Bones Jones at that time, because he'll probably move up to the heavyweight division at that time. It's a very thing. There's a Doce diet, which is created by Mike Doce, who teaches fighters how to go down to their weight in a proper way where they're not over dehydrated or anything like that. There was an amazing fight by Chad Mendes, who took out Cody McKenzie in just a couple seconds out of that first round. So there's the UFC is getting pretty exciting now. I was one of the first people to bitch about the pay-per-view events having like no names and having like the main event. Well, I remember back in the days when you would be able to watch, like, you would order the pay-per-view when Tito Ortiz was first light champion, and that thing would run for 4 hours, and it was just like great fight after great fight after great fight. But they're getting pretty good. The Brazilian one, I didn't see that as being a great one, but the middleweight division is very there's a huge talent pool. Rich Franklin just came out of a fight out with Vanderlei. So I think Mark Munoz, if he wins the next fight, he should they should give him the fight for Anderson Silva, because he's right up there in the top contention. That's my thoughts on that. The other things I wanted to talk about was let's see. I think Brian Stann should, if anything else, Brian Stann and Mark Munoz should go for the two ones that should fight Anderson Silva. I like Brian Stann. Chael Sonnen, for people that don't know and think that he's like this arrogant asshole, it's just a promotion tool. I've heard him before on podcasts and stuff like that, and he's even admitted it. He admitted it to Joe Rogan that, you know what, in the first fight, Anderson Silva did tap me out. I honestly don't remember tapping. He goes, but you're losing circulation, you don't remember stuff, and so the better guy did win that fight. Now, do I believe that Anderson Silva won the first fight? Kinda. This is what I think. Did he win the fight? Yes. Did he win the championship by saving himself? Yes. Did he win the fight? No. The whole four and a half rounds, it was just a brutal beatdown on this guy, and he survived it by doing a lock. So do you consider that one of his greatest upsets? It's one of his greatest upsets, but it's not one of the greatest fights. That one was truly dominated by Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen took it back on this one and absolutely dominated in the first round. So Anderson Silva, no go to the light heavyweight. There's a lot more people he can go ahead and run through, or maybe end up catching his first defeat in the middleweight division. I think that Anderson Silva will move down to light heavyweight eventually. But I also think that Anderson Silva is weak in his wrestling background, and I think eventually somebody like Mark Munoz will take advantage of that if they follow the Chael Sonnen game plan. I mean, Vito Belfort and all those people wanted to go toe-to-toe with this guy, and that's something you don't do with somebody who has that high level of kickboxing or Muay Thai kickboxing, and if you're fighting somebody with no pedigree in wrestling. So I think a wrestler will eventually take down Anderson Silva. It's just hard to see who will. I think toe-to-toe, maybe Alan Belcher will be able to go toe-to-toe slugfest with him. Never know. But people with the whole thing of having him move to light heavyweight, no, not yet. Let's go ahead and see the new guys from the middleweight division do some damage and show their opportunity of being a middleweight champion. This is Hector from In the Mix of Chaos, and you guys have a great week, and we'll come back probably in a week and a half with Screaming Rebels podcast episode 16, European Crisis, and you can go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube. Bye. Screaming Rebels presents In the Mix of Chaos is brought to you by Contreras Small Engine Repairs, located on 320 West 4th Street, Hanford, California. Phone number for them is 582-8400, or you can also visit them at hanfordsmallengine.com for any of your small engine repair needs, as well as having fresh new machinery that you can buy there as well. Go ahead and go in there, tell them that Screaming Rebels or In the Mix of Chaos sent you, and go ahead and talk to our good friends at Contreras Small Engines Repairs. And this is hello, my name is Hector, and welcome to In the Mix of Chaos. This is podcast, or actually videocast number 5. Today I'm talking about Neanderthals versus Bigfoot, and the reason that I bring this up is because we are talking about I saw a documentary, and the documentary was by Danny Verdemine on YouTube last night. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and basically he was proclaiming that Neanderthals are not close to similarity to humans as we thought. They're more of a primate looking species of human, and he believes in that by the structure of the skull and how big the orbits are. He believes that we've always been wrong and trying to mask it to make it look like a human. He believes they're more of a gorilla-like looking human and would actually be more of a predator than what they thought it was like a herbivore and carnivore, and get hunter-gatherer, but he believes they were more hunter than gathering. And he believed that the eyes were bigger because he was a night predator, and animals who hunt at night need bigger eyes to reflect the light. And so he is making it look more like a primate than an actual human. He also believes that these animals would actually hunt humans and eat them, and he believes that there is evidence of actually procreation and mating between Neanderthals and Homo erectus. He also believes there was cannibalism between these two, and basically the humans got fed up and ended up hunting them to extinction. He also brought a good theory that this is why I did the show, is he said that in our gene structure, we have a fear of boogeymen and big monsters. And he believes this fear is naturally based from our primordial ancient history of being fearful of these big monsters such as woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, and saber-toothed tigers, but as well as the Neanderthal. And the Neanderthal would actually fit the boogeyman criteria as being this larger than us, looking more like us thing that would hunt us down. And that kind of brought a good question, but he never touched about the base that we ended up hunting them down. So my theory was, if we had ended up hunting them down, wouldn't they be in fear of us in the end? And that brings me to the thing of Bigfoot. Can there be something that if maybe he was right and they looked more like a primate? If you look at the YouTube, it looks like a Sasquatch. And my thing is, maybe he's onto something, and maybe the Sasquatch sightings and stuff like that are possibly very real, and there's not some missing link, but actually a Neanderthal that, has been in seclusion and hiding. And it would make perfect sense because we hunted these animals down to extinction, so they would be very fearful of us humans. Even if being a bigger animal doesn't necessarily mean that they are more aggressive towards us. If they had this genetic system of living in fear with us, you have to think about Oregon and all those places where they usually find them. It's hundreds and hundreds of miles of thick wilderness that humans really don't go all the way through. So there can be something probably living in there. And that's my theory, is if Sasquatch or a Yeti or a Bigfoot lived, perhaps it is what he claims is a Neanderthal. And, but then again, I'm like this crazy person that believes in cryptozoology and wants to believe that there's these crazy animals that haven't yet been discovered by us. But people have been proven wrong. We find new species about every year living in the Amazon and everywhere else in the world. So that was my theory. Want to know what you guys think? You guys can go ahead and you can Twitter us at Screaming Rebels or Hector the Beast G at Twitter. Also Also, if you want to see the video, you can actually go to the website, go to Screaming Rebels at YouTube, subscribe to us while you're there, and go ahead and look at the place that I subscribe, and he's actually on there. His name is Danny Vertamine, and he's actually, his name is the website. It's all put together. That's going to do it. It's just a little short one. Just wanted to give my thoughts out there about the Sasquatch, Yeti, and the Neanderthal look. I personally kind of don't believe what he's saying, simply because we've had so many people who have done the study on these animals, and this is the first time that I've heard of something looking like this and everything else. I'm pretty sure archaeologists and everybody else have done DNA studies and skin studies and everything else to kind of prove his theory wrong, but then there's something that you never know. We could be wrong about our perception of what a Neanderthal looks like. I think it's something intriguing, and I think something that I would like to believe in. I like to believe in these mythical creatures that still live, but in reality, it's probably not. There's nothing, but there's people that go out there and see them. There's people on Discovery Channel, History Channel that. One of the most boring ass ones is that Sasquatch, the hunting Bigfoot. That was one of the most ridiculous shows I've ever seen. But then, there's people that are fanatics about it and do believe in the cryptozoology theory about these animals being very much alive. We found giant squid, giant man stingray, so there can be a possibility of a giant Sasquatch or a primate living in the thick northern woods of Oregon. So my name is Hector. This is In the Mix of Chaos, and good night. Welcome to In the Mix of Chaos. This is the MMA episode again. This is part 2, or second MMA edition of In the Mix of Chaos. Today we're going to be talking about 149. Cruz versus Bernal was the main event, and Bernal came out the champion of that one, doing a lot of leg kicks and keeping Uriah Faber away in distance, and as well just getting him with the leg kicks. So that was the main event. But I wanted to speak more about the middleweights again, since my thought was, hey, Hector Lombard's coming. He's a big big MMA fighter, and everybody was going for him right now. He was currently, before the fight, he was 18-1, and the last fight that he lost was in about 6 years ago. And so, there was this big hype of, was he going to be the next person to possibly face Anderson Silva? The fight came out, and it was absolutely lackluster. Tim Bocek, who is 5-4 on that fight, basically dominated him by keeping his distance and keeping him out of his striking range, and dominating him in the first, second, and then third round. I think Hector tried to take him down, but it was a complete dull of a fight, and so it still leaves the question of who's up next to get Anderson Silva. So I compiled a little list of fighters. We have Chris Weidman, who's 7-0, who recently beat Mark Munoz on the Fuel UFC, and he basically dominated and just crushed Munoz. Munoz had no chance on that one, and it was a complete surprise as well. I thought for certain that Mark Munoz was going to win that fight. Mark Munoz right now is at 9-3, 9 wins and 3 losses. That was one of my personal favorites to go against Anderson Silva. With that loss, I don't see him getting there. He probably need a couple more fights and actually winning, possibly 2 to even get a title contention now. Tim Bocek looks good. He's one of those underdog stories that nobody really has faith in, and he did an outstanding last fight with Yushin Okami, where he knocked out Yushin Okami in the 3rd round. Yushin Okami winning the 1st and 2nd round. Also, Brian Stann, who's 11-4 right now, is probably in the title contention, and Alan Belcher, who's 9-4. Alan Belcher came off a big win. He was out of the UFC for about 2 years. He had a detached retina. Nobody really knew if he was going to come back to the UFC. Nobody knew if he was going to come back to MMA at all. Came back with an outstanding fight, and I think he won that one by TKO. Also, there's Michael the Count Bisping, who's right now 12-4. The last fight he fought was with Chael Sonnen, and he lost. But Michael Bisping's been one of the most solid middleweights out there, and he has a fight coming up, and with the win, he might actually get a title contention. Chael Sonnen, who just recently lost to Anderson Silva, is right now 13-6. So, once again, what I was trying to say is a lot of people talk about the middleweight, Anderson Silva needing to move out of the middleweights and go into the light heavyweight division. He already said he's not going to. John Bones said he's not going to at any time soon. And everybody keeps saying, the middleweights are really, really not for him. He absolutely dominated. And I just named 7 fighters he's not fought. And I think they're the top. Right now, I think the best choice for an Anderson Silva would probably be Chris Weidman, Brian Stann, I would like to see Mark Munoz probably fight Hector Lombard. I mean, Hector Lombard was calling him the whole time. Before UFC 149, he said the next person he'd like to fight was Mark Munoz. Mark Munoz coming out of a loss right now, and Hector Lombard coming out of first loss to the UFC. I'd probably like to see those two fight. Tim Bocek moving up on the ladder, I see him maybe fighting Alan Belcher would be interesting. I mean, these guys are on the top contention right now, and it's a real... Yushin Okami's still in there. I don't have his stats. Yushin Okami's been doing really well as well. really well. So that's probably another person I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't buy the whole bullshit that the middleweights are done and they need to move on. I would like to see Chris Weidman actually fight Anderson Silva. The next fights will be, I think, in August 4th. Let me get that. UFC. I don't say it right now. So we'll see who's fighting. But for the people that who are not UFC fighters, I'm sorry about this one. I'm a fanatic, and actually I'm trying to plan a bigger show where I'll have a panel speaking with me about the UFC, and we're going to try to go ahead and aim for September 1st. Henderson and John Bones Jones fight. So that'll be an interesting one. Right now it just looks like Machida's fighting Bader. Those are light heavyweights. I thought I saw Michael Bisping was going to fight somebody recently. Scheduled upcoming events, and we'll see what's going on there. And I could be wrong. Fight card for Henderson versus Edgar's coming on August 11th. I'm actually going for Ben Henderson again. I'm a big Henderson fan since he was in the WEC. Did that sidewalk ninja kick. Middleweights. What else do we have in the middleweights? Okami's fighting Polaris or Paul Harris. My bad. He's fighting Paul Harris on the Frankie Edgar fight. So that'd be interesting to see Okami and Paul Harris fight. Paul Harris is pretty good. I mean, right now he's going for. Paul Harris is at a 23 and 4 losses. And Yushin Okami already fought Anderson Silva. That was kind of a stalemate kind of fight, and Anderson Silva ended up beating him. So Yushin Okami has already had his chance with Anderson Silva. Upcoming events. You know what? Let me just put Michael Bisping. Help if I can write Michael Bisping. Yeah, he's one of the good fighters. He has really good stand-up boxing background, and he's really good at stuffing any takedowns that a wrestler would try to do. He's fighting Brian Stann on UFC 152. He's going to be fighting on the Benavidez and Demetrius Johnson fight. That should be actually a really good UFC. And for some reason, not the co-main event, but the third one is BJ Penn versus Rory McDonald. That's actually a really interesting fight. I see Rory McDonald winning that one. That guy's a beast. I mean, he is a phenomenal fighter. I think he's won every single... I don't think he has a loss yet. He might have a loss with... Oh, yeah, he has a loss with Carlos Condit, that's right, and that was a split decision, TKO punches. But after that, he beat Chet Mills, Mike Pio, Nate Diaz. Before the loss of Carlos Condit, he beat Mike Guyon, Nick Heathcliff, Elmer Welchin. You know, he's beaten a lot of the other ones were from the King of the Cage fights, and then he went into the UFC. And the one that introduced him to it was Mike Gumon. And then he fought Carlos Condit right after that. He lost. And then Nate Diaz, Mike Pio, and Chet Mills. So Rory McDonald's one of these beasts. He's going on a 3-fight winning streak. And he's going to go ahead and fight BJ Penn. That should be a very interesting fight. That probably will be the last time we see BJ Penn fight in the UFC. So that's my thoughts. I'm going for Chris Weidman to fight Anderson Silva. If Brian Stann and Michael Bisping might be in the contention, and we'll see in 152 what happens. Then you got to think about injuries. I know Tim Bochek broke his foot during the fight with Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard was not what I thought. I apologize for anybody who thought I thought it was going to be a good fight. So I'm going for Chris Weidman, either Michael Bisping or Brian Stann, who wins the next fight. Brian Stann would be an awesome fight for Anderson Silva. They're both really stocky and tall. So this is Hector from In the Mix of Chaos. This is MMA Edition 2. Either tomorrow, Monday or Tuesday, we're going to go ahead and do Screaming Rebels podcast episode 16. We're going to go ahead and talk about The Dark Knight Rises. A spoiler alert, that's close to the end. But in the first part, we will be talking about Christopher Nolan's whole trilogy, going from Batman Begins to Dark Knight to Dark Knight Rises. We'll go ahead and go in depth about the whole thing, the similarities to the comic book, what comic books they're coming from, where is it based, because if you don't know, there's many universes of Batman where they had to decide which one they were going to use. So that's going to be an interesting watch. You don't want to miss that one. And like I said, I'm planning to have like a little panel for the September 1st fights with Henderson versus Jones. That's going to be a great fight. 152, I think I might have another panel for that one. Once again, this is Hector from In the Mix of Chaos. You guys have a good night.